Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now I know it's been a long time since I did a video talking about modern F1, but here is my qualifying report for Australia. So hopefully this will be going out this evening on the 15th of March, a few hours before the Grand Prix. I would say a few hours because it's a very early start for us in the UK. So now we get a taster of what it's like to be on the other side of the world in Oceania or in Asia. So I'm going to be going through each driver's sort of performances, and I'm going to do it from the very back of the grid. So Ollie Bearman, who unfortunately didn't set a time in qualifying, all the way up to pole sitter Lando Norris. There we go, I got it this time. So hopefully I'm going to try and make this a thing for every race, but it's going to be tricky to do because I am inconsistent. So let's begin with Ollie Bearman. So Ollie Bearman, fortunately, from the very get-go, his weekend was pretty hijacked. So he started the weekend, coming into it, he was probably thinking, first Grand Prix weekend as a proper driver, feeling the pressure of being a Formula 1 driver, not the fact that I'm a stand-in or things like that. But unfortunately, it didn't get off to a good start for him because he had all sorts of issues in practice, which meant that he couldn't get any running in, which, I mean, they were his fault. He did crash, which meant in FP1, which meant that in FP2 he couldn't run because FP2's run so close to FP1. But in FP3 he had a spin as well, so that meant he had very little track time. And in qualifying, as I'll show you, he didn't get a time in because he had gearbox trouble. So Bearman's basically coming into the race, which is going to be fully wet, by the way. Really, really wet. It's going to be a wet race, thinking, just got to get through it, basically. And Haas seem to just be struggling a lot, as do Sauber and Aston Martin compared to, the last couple of seasons of performance. Because Haas are lining up the back row of the grid because Esteban Ocon is in 19th. It just seems that Haas lacked the pace this weekend. I don't know if it's anything to do with, I don't know if Ocon had issues or not. I will preface by saying I only came in for qualifying in the last couple of minutes of Q1, so I did miss most of Q1. So much of what I'm saying here is based on what I know. So if I have made any errors, then I do apologise. I didn't watch all of qualifying, however, so I can't exactly say. Haas seemed to be lacking the pace. I could be wrong. It could have been like a mistake that Ocon made or something like that. I don't know. But Haas are going to be wanting to improve because obviously, they had a very good year last year, especially when Nico Hulkenberg did a brilliant job. Of course, he's not there anymore. He's at Sauber. Another team that are struggling this weekend. Maybe it's something to do with that. I don't think so. Nowadays, it's more about the car, about the designer of the car, rather than the actual driver's feedback. And it's been like that since the 2000s, since the 90s even. Now we're going to move on to Liam Lawson in 18th. And there was a really, really good story I saw by F1 Stats Guru. And it was a tweet by this guy called Spanners, and it was like, 1 like equals 1 apology for Perez. And it's like, comparing the two of them is ridiculous. Lawson's done 11 Grand Prix. He has done 2 races where he scored points, 2 points scoring finishes. Perez, by contrast, had, I think, something like 300 Grand Prix. So I just think, what is the point of comparing the two of them? Because Lawson's a rookie. You're setting him up to fail by comparing the two of them. Because Perez has had so much more experience in F1. Perez had 14 seasons in F1, and it didn't help that his tires sort of went off towards the end of the lap. You could see, according to Lawson, he was half a second up on his best lap. But unfortunately, he had 2 moments, and then he went off, and basically he couldn't improve on his time because what happened was he was coming out of the chicane, the fast left-right chicane, and on the exit, his car got all squirrely to snap of oversteer, and then again at the next braking zone, which was a right-hander, he had the same, and then the final braking zone, which was a left, he went off. So there's not much he can really, the tires went off. You can't really blame him for that, and the designers. So then we've got Nico Hulkenberg. Sauber, after a very good end to last season, they don't seem to be on the pace. But Hulkenberg should probably be doing better considering his rookie teammate beat him. Now, what's funny is the last time he had a rookie teammate was his first stint at Sauber in 2013, in terms of the full season, because obviously he had Bearman as the teammate last season in Baku and Sao Paulo, but that wasn't for the whole season. Whereas in 2013, he had Esteban Gutierrez as his teammate for the whole of the 2013 season. Hulkenberg, again, Sauber don't seem to have the pace, which isn't surprising. So it would have been a miracle for him to get out of Q1. And a miracle nearly happened because, I mean, Antonelli and Lawson both had issues. So that's two top cars that aren't there. So, I mean, he could have gotten through, but he didn't have the pace, unlike Bortoleto, who we'll get onto in a minute. Then we've got Kimi Antonelli. Now, apparently he had a problem, which was causing him to have more drag on the straights, which means he was losing 4/10, roughly, to George Russell. So he would have been out of Q1, and he probably would have gotten into Q3 potentially if he hadn't had such issues. I mean, maybe he wouldn't have. It depends. I don't think he would have had the experience to get into Q3, but he would have gotten close, I think. Yeah, Kimi, he's 18, third youngest ever F1 driver. He's doing good considering, you know, the fact that he had a massive jump up from Formula 3.5, which is like FRECA, to F2 and then to F1. Not many drivers do that. You know, most drivers do F4, FRECA, or F4, F3, F2, F1. Nowadays, anyway. I mean, for example, Bortoleto did FRECA, and then he did F3 and F2. And he actually won F3 and F2 back-to-back. And speaking of Bortoleto, he did a very, very good job. He managed to out-qualify Hulkenberg, which is not an easy task to do for a rookie, but he did a brilliant job. And you may be wondering, why does it say 1:17.520? Well, that was his Q2 time. His Q1 time was quicker than that, but unfortunately in Q2 he had a moment and nearly crashed the car. It was actually very impressive that he managed to keep it out the barriers, but unfortunately it ruined his lap. And the thing is some other drivers over the years have actually binned it through there. One of them was Sebastian Vettel, in fact, in 2022. So it was impressive that Bortoleto managed to keep it on the aisle. He, of course, didn't improve, so he's starting 15th. And then we have Jack Doohan, who I think has done a very, very good job this weekend. He's sort of silencing the critics. He was on pace with Gasly. He was even quicker than him in practice. And he probably would have had a better time if he wasn't held up by traffic in the final sector and by Lewis Hamilton having a spin. And we'll get onto Ferrari circles in a little bit. But Doohan did quite well, I think. Maybe he could have gotten ahead of one of the Aston Martins or both of them, but I don't think he would have gotten any further than that because, I mean, he's still getting used to the environment in the car, you know. I mean, he'll know everybody in the team because he's been an Alpine junior for quite a few years now, but it'll take him a bit of time to get used to it. And then we got the Aston Martins. Not much notes on them, to be honest. And by the way, I'll go back to Doohan for a minute. Thing is, right, if he had traffic in the first or second sector, he might have been all right because, I mean, in the first sector, you got two straights. Second sector, you've got two really long straights. And then in the final sector, you've got like half a straight and technical corners. So he got held up in the last sector, which is the worst place to have traffic because they might be on the racing line getting ready to start their lap because it's the end of the lap, or they might be on an in lap and, you know, they don't realize somebody's coming, because that can happen very easily because, I mean, in their mirrors, they'll see obviously, but because of how the corner is, you only really see the driver only like a couple seconds before the corner, so you got to react like that. And sometimes drivers just don't look in their mirrors. Speaking of Aston Martin, not much really with them. Well done to Stroll, not far off Alonso. That's it for Aston Martin. Not really much to say, they just don't have the pace. Now we have the highest rookie, Isack Hadjar, and the only rookie to really not have any misfortune on the count of Doohan having traffic, Antonelli having floor damage, Lawson having tyres going off, Bortoleto nearly crashing, and Bearman having gearbox issues. He was the only one who had a bit of running, and he was very, very quick. He managed to out-qualify both Aston Martins, and I'm very impressed by Isack Hadjar. I'll say Isack Hadjar. And I think he did a very, very good job, and people need to give him a bit more credit than he actually has. So, fair play to Isack Hadjar. 11th place, one of my qualifiers of the weekend, which I'm going to try and make a feature as well. However, somebody who will have qualifier of the weekend is not too far away from him in terms of the pit lane position. So now we move on to the top 10, and this is where we get to the team qualifier of the weekend for me. So we're going into Q3, and that is Williams. Brilliant job for them. I think the Williams fans are finally thinking, we've got two drivers we can rely upon. One of them is a proven Grand Prix winner, and one of them has carried that Williams car to the points more times than they can count. I mean, for example, 2022 here, Albon finished 10th. Alex Albon finished 10th after running all but one lap on the hard tyres in that race. And then, of course, you have last year's winner of here, Carlos Sainz. Didn't have an appendix removed this time, so maybe not as quick, but still very, very good job. Some people have joked, but because Williams only have 2 out of possible 4 appendixes, they've gained a bit of pace because obviously Albon had his removed as well. Very good job from Sainz, and a very, very good job from Alex Albon. If Yuki Tsunoda hadn't been so high up, I probably would have given Albon my qualifier of the weekend, but it's going to go to Tsunoda, and I will talk about why in a minute. But Williams, they look good. It looks like they're finally building that team that James Vowles has been talking about since he came in as team principal, and people were like, him as team principal? That's a big step up. But no, he's dealt with it very well. They didn't have a very good year last year. They won the Destructors' Championship because they had to pay the most in damage bills for the amount of crashes that Sargent and Colapinto and Albon had. But it started well for them here. It's about whether or not they can maintain it over the season, though. Now we've got Pierre Gasly in 9th, a solid drive. I mean, Gasly's always been a very quick driver. The only year he really had where he wasn't consistent was 2019 when he was in the Red Bull. But every other year, he has been on it. Like, 2021 Gasly was phenomenal. 2024 Gasly, also brilliant. Gasly is just a fantastic driver in general. His pace shows that Alpine are in the midfield battle with Williams, with Aston Martin, with Haas, with Sauber. And, you know, they are there to fight for those positions, regardless. And RB as well. RB, of course, Racing Bulls, the very top of that, in my opinion. And his pace shows that Alpine are there and they're ready to fight. And then, this year is our year. Ferrari fans, you might want to look away now. Hamilton and Leclerc, 8th and 7th. Not looking good. Hamilton had a spin in Q2, which costed Jack Doohan a bit of pace, and it's not been good at all for Ferrari. Leclerc not even able to outperform the car and maybe get it into the top 5 because it's just not got much pace, which is strange because, I mean, in practice they looked quite quick. In pre-season testing they were the second quickest team behind McLaren, but it seems as though them and Red Bull, I mean Verstappen anyway, have swapped places because Ferrari were second quickest, Red Bull were 4th, and now it's swapped around because Verstappen's managed to be highest driver that isn't a McLaren, and Ferrari are down behind Alex Albon's Williams and Yuki Tsunoda's Racing Bull. So not great for them. They really need to nail tomorrow. I mean, I think they will because Hamilton is a wet weather god. Him and Verstappen are anyway, and I predict that it'll be Verstappen, Norris, and Hamilton on the podium tomorrow. Because I can just feel a Verstappen win because of the weather. I mean, I could be wrong, but I doubt. So Ferrari, they probably hit the stinker of the weekend. I think if I had to give a stinker of the weekend award for a team, it'd be them. And if I had to give a driver a stinker, well, to be fair, there's not really anybody I can give a stinker apart from maybe Hulkenberg or Esteban Ocon, to be honest. So now we move on to Alex Albon and Williams, and wow, amazing job from him, amazing job from the Williams team. Good job from Williams. I already said everything I've needed to in regards to Sainz. Well done to Albon for outperforming him. Of course, he has been with the team longer, and I suppose the car might be more built around him, because they know exactly how he drives, and maybe they know about him a little bit more than they do about Sainz. But a great job from Albon. As I said, you know, he did very well in Australia in 2022. And now we move on to the man I'm going to give qualifier of the week. Sorry. So now we're going to move on to the man I'm going to give qualifier of the weekend to, and that is Yuki Tsunoda. P5 in the Racing Bull. What a performance. Brilliant performance from Yuki, and he has got a lot to prove because this is his 5th season in Formula 1. And he's trying to show that he's good enough to be on the grid. I mean, he's 25 this year. He's not a youngster anymore, really. So he needs to prove himself on the Formula 1 grid and show to teams that he's good enough, because Honda aren't going to help him anymore, apparently. So he needs to get better, and he's showing that he's a good enough driver. And now we move on to what was expected to be the top 4 heading into Q3. Considering Ferrari's struggles in Q1 and Q2, and that would be George Russell, Max Verstappen, and the 2 McLarens, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. So George Russell, very, very good performance from him. His main goal was to just sort of be up there with Verstappen and the McLarens, and he was just a tiny bit off of Verstappen, less than a 10th. Those two have been very close together, as have McLaren not McLaren, as have Red Bull and Mercedes and Ferrari. for much of pre-season. I mean, Ferrari at one point were quite far ahead, but then, you know, they started to have sort of steps back, and yeah, they're not looking good right now. But good job from George. He was known as Mr. Saturday back when he was at Williams, and yeah, it's expected that he's going to do well. And now the guy I think is going to win tomorrow, Max Verstappen. Just, you know, he's a four-time world champion. He's been the reigning champion for like what four seasons now. He's good. You don't really need to say much else apart from, yeah, he's done exactly what the best he could have gotten out of the car, because there's no way he was going to be fighting the McLarens, and he was fortunate enough to be close to them in Q1 and Q2, but I don't think he would have been able to beat Piastri or Lando because both of them were just too quick for him. And then we move on to the McLarens, the final team. And, I mean, Oscar's going to probably be a little bit annoyed he didn't get pole at home and get his first pole in Formula 1 as well, because he hasn't gotten a pole yet. People forget that. But, you know, it's a front row start for him, which is very, very good. At home as well, he's going to try and break the Australian curse, which has existed since it came onto the calendar 40 years ago, the Australian Grand Prix. Both at Adelaide and at Melbourne, no Australian driver has ever been classified second or third or first to get on the podium at an Australian Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo did in 2014, but he got disqualified. So Oscar's going to be hoping that that doesn't happen to him, because, well, it'd be a good way to start the season if he got a podium, especially at home, breaking the curse that, you know, not even the likes of Alan Jones, Mark Webber, or Daniel Ricciardo have been able to break, you know. And then you got pole sitter Lando Norris, 10th pole in F1. I think the Australian fans will be very angry that he got pole, but he's there, and he's going to try and prove them wrong by leading into turn 1, which is something he has often not done when starting from pole. So that's sort of my qualifying report. I had to film this 3 times because I kept having the camera audio play instead of my microphone audio, but I got it this time, so all good. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. Well, I say tomorrow, it's only going to be in a few hours time probably by the time this video comes out, because well, I'm up at 4 AM for this and I'm streaming it, so bye guys.